Diversity in the living world. Biology is the science of life forms and living processes. Early man could easily perceive the difference between inanimate matter and living organisms. Early man deified some of the inanimate matter, wind, sea, fire, etc., and some among animals and plants. A common feature of all such forms of inanimate and animate objects was the sense of awe or fear that they evoked. The description of living organisms, including human beings, began much later in human history. Societies which indulged in an anthropocentric view of biology could register limited progress in biological knowledge. Systematic and monumental description of life forms brought in out of necessity detailed systems of identification, nomenclature, and classification. The biggest spin off of such studies was the recognition of sharing of similarities among living organisms, both horizontally and vertically. That all present day living organisms are related to each other and also to all organisms that ever lived on this earth was a revelation which humbled man and led to cultural movements for conservation of biodiversity. Ernst Mayr, born on 5th July 1904, Kempten, Germany. Ernst Mayr was the Harvard University evolutionary biologist who has been called the Darwin of 20th century, was one of the 100 greatest scientists of all times, assuming the title Alexander Agassiz Professor of Zoology Emeritus. Throughout his nearly 80-year career, his research spanned ornithology, taxonomy, zoogeography, evolution, systematics, and the history and philosophy of biology. He single-handedly made the origin of species diversity, the central question of evolutionary biology that it is today, pioneered the currently accepted definition of biological species. Mayr was awarded the three prizes, widely regarded as Triple Crown of Biology: Bunsen Prize in 1983, International Prize for Biology in 1994, and Crawford Prize in 1999. What is living? Growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment, and mount a suitable response come to our mind immediately as unique features of living organisms. One can add a few more features like metabolism, ability to self replicate, self organize, interact, and emergence to this list. All living organisms grow. Increase in mass and increase in number of individuals are twin characteristics of growth. A multicellular organism grows by cell division. In plants, this growth by cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. In animals, this growth is seen only up to a certain age. However, cell division occurs in certain tissues to replace lost cells. Unicellular organisms grow or multiply by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro cultures by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. In majority of higher animals and plants, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. One must remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. Non-living objects also grow if we take increase in body mass as criterion for growth. Growth exhibited by non-living objects is by accumulation of material on the surface. In living organisms, growth is from inside. Growth therefore cannot be taken as a defining feature of living organisms. Conditions under which it can be observed in all living organisms have to be explained, and then we understand that it is a characteristic of living systems. A dead organism does not grow. Reproduction likewise is a characteristic of living organisms. In multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to the production of progeny possessing features more or less similar to those of parents. Invariably and implicitly, we refer to sexual reproduction. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to millions of asexual spores they produce. In low organisms like yeast and hydra, we observe budding. In planaria flatworms, true regeneration, that is, fragmented organism regenerates the lost part of its body and becomes a new organism. The fungi, the filamentous algae, protonym of mosses all easily multiply by fragmentation. When it comes to unicellular organisms like bacteria, unicellular algae, or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with growth, that is, increase in number of cells. We have defined growth as equivalent to increase in cell number or mass. Hence, in single-celled organisms, we are not very clear about the usage of these two terms, growth and reproduction. Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce: mules, sterile worker bees, infertile human couples, etc. Reproduction also cannot be an all-inclusive defining characteristic of living organisms. No non-living object is capable of reproducing or replicating by itself. Another characteristic of life is metabolism. All living organisms are made of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, sizes, functions, etc., are constantly being made and changed into some other biomolecules. These conversions are chemical reactions or metabolic reactions. There are thousands of metabolic reactions occurring simultaneously inside all living organisms, be they unicellular or multicellular. All plants, animals, fungi, and microbes exhibit metabolism. The sum total of all chemical reactions occurring in our body is metabolism. No non-living object exhibits metabolism. Metabolic reactions can be demonstrated outside the body in cell-free systems. An isolated metabolic reaction outside the body of an organism performed in a test tube is neither living nor non-living. Hence, while metabolism is a defining feature of all living organisms without exception, isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are not living things but surely living reactions. Hence, cellular organization of the body is the defining feature of life forms. Technically complicated feature of all living organisms is this ability to sense their environment and respond to these environmental stimuli, which could be physical, chemical, or biological. Plants respond to external factors like light, water, temperature, other organisms, pollutants, etc. All organisms, from the prokaryotes to the most complex eukaryotes, can sense and respond to environmental cues. Photoperiod affects reproduction in seasonal breeders, both plants and animals. All organisms handle chemicals entering their bodies. All organisms are aware of their surroundings. Human beings is the only organism who is aware of himself, that is, has self-consciousness. Consciousness, therefore, becomes the defining property of living organisms. Example is pollutants affects plant. When it comes to human beings, it is all the more difficult to define the living state. Patients lying in coma in hospitals virtually supported by machines. The patient is brain dead but has no self-consciousness. Such patients who never come back to normal life are said to be in vegetative state. All living phenomena are due to underlying interactions. Properties of tissues are not present in constituent cells but arise as a result of interactions among the constituent cells. Similarly, properties of cellular organelles are not present in the molecular constituents of the organelle but arise as a result of interactions among the molecular components comprising the organelle. These interactions result in emergent properties at a higher level of organization. This phenomenon is true in hierarchy of organizational complexity at all levels. Living organisms are self-replicating, evolving, and self-regulating interactive systems capable of responding to external stimuli. Biology is the story of life on Earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on Earth. All living organisms, present, past, and future, are linked to one another by sharing of common genetic material, but to varying degrees. Diversity in the living world. Increase in the area that you make observations uh, leads to the range and variety of organisms that you see would also increase. If you were to visit a dense forest, you would probably see a much greater number and kinds of living organisms in it. Each different kind of plant, animal, or organism that you see represents a species. The number of species that are known and described range between 1.7 to 1.8 million. This refers to biodiversity or the number and types of organisms present on Earth. New organisms are continuously being identified. There is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms such that a particular organism is known by the same name all over the world. This process is called nomenclature. Nomenclature naming is only possible when the organism is described correctly and we know to what organism the name is attached to. This is identification. In order to facilitate the study, number of scientists have established procedures to assign a scientific name to each known organism. This is acceptable to biologists all over the world. For plants, scientific names are based on agreed principles and criteria which are provided in International Code for Botanical Nomenclature (ICBN). Animal taxonomists who have evolved International Code of Zoological Nomenclature (ICZN). The scientific names ensure that each organism has only one name. Description of any organism should enable the people in any part of the world to arrive at the same name. They also ensure that such a name has not been used for any other known organism. Biologists follow universally accepted principles to provide scientific names to known organisms. Each name has two components, the generic name and the specific epithet. This system of providing a name with two components is called binomial nomenclature. This naming system, given by Carlos Linus, is being practiced by biologists all over the world. This naming system, using a two-word format, was found convenient. Scientific name of mango is written as Mangifera indica. Mangifera represents the genus, while indica is a particular species or a specific epithet. Biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics. They are Latinized or derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. The first word in biological name represents the genus while the second component denotes the specific epithet. Both the words in a biological name, when handwritten, are separately underlined or printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. The first word denoting the genus starts with a capital letter while the specific epithet starts with a small letter. Name of author appears after the specific epithet, that is at the end of biological name, and is written in an abbreviated form. Example, Mangifera indica Linn. It indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus. Since it is nearly impossible to study all living organisms, it is necessary to devise some means to make this possible. This process is classification. Classification is the process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters. Dogs, cats, mammals, wheat, rice, plants, animals, etc. are convenient categories we use to study organisms. The scientific term for these categories is taxa. Taxa can indicate categories at very different levels. Plants also form a taxa. Wheat is also a taxa. Similarly, animals, mammals, dogs are all taxa. But you know that a dog is a mammal and mammals are animals. Therefore, animals, mammals, and dogs represent taxa at different levels. Hence, based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. This process of classification is taxonomy. External and internal structure, along with structure of cell, development process, and ecological information of organisms are essential and form the basis of modern taxonomic studies. Characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the processes that are basic to taxonomy. The earliest classifications were based on the uses of various organisms. Human beings were since long not only interested in knowing more about different kinds of organisms and their diversities, but also the relationships among them. This branch of study was referred to as systematics. The word systematics is derived from the Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of organisms. Linnaeus used Systema Naturae as the title of his publication. The scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification. Systematics takes into account evolutionary relationships between organisms. Taxonomic categories. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of steps in which each step represents a rank or category. Since the category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called the taxonomic category, and all categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. Each category, referred to as unit of classification, in fact represents a rank and is commonly termed as taxon. Plural is taxa. Taxonomic categories and hierarchy can be illustrated by an example. Insects represents a group of organisms sharing common features like three pairs of jointed legs. It means insects are recognizable, concrete objects which can be classified and thus were given rank or category. Groups represent category. Category further denotes rank. Each rank or taxon, in fact, represents a unit of classification. These taxonomic groups, categories, are distinct biological entities and not merely morphological aggregates. Taxonomical studies of all known organisms have led to the development of common categories such as kingdom, phylum, or division for plants, class, order, family, genus, and species. All organisms, including those in the plant and animal kingdoms, have species as the lowest category. How to place an organism in various categories. The basic requirement is the knowledge of characters of an individual or group of organisms. This helps in identifying similarities and dissimilarities among the individuals of the same kind of organisms, as well as of other kinds of organisms. Species. Taxonomic studies consider a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities as a species. One should be able to distinguish one species from the other closely related species based on the distinct morphological differences. Mangifera indica, Solanum, tuberosum, potato, and Panthera leo, that is lion, are different species. Each genus may have one or more than one specific epithets representing different organisms but having morphological similarities. Solanum includes species like Nigrum and Melongena. Also, Panthera includes species like Leo, Tigris, and Pardus. Genus. Genus comprises a group of related species which has more characters in common in comparison to species of other genera. Genera are aggregates of closely related species. Potato and brinjal are two different species but both belong to the genus Solanum. Lion, leopard, and tiger, Panthera leo, Panthera pardus, and Panthera tigris, with several common features, are all species of genus Panthera. This genus differs from another genus, Felis, which includes cats. Family. Family has a group of related genera with still less number of similarities as compared to genus and species. Families are characterized on the basis of both vegetative and reproductive features of plant species. Among plants, for example, three different genera, Solanum, Petunia, and Datura, are placed in the family Solanaceae. Among animals, genus Panthera, comprising lion, tiger, leopard, is put along with genus Felis, cats, in the family Felidae. A cat and a dog, you will find some similarities and some differences as well. They are separated into two different families, Felidae and Canidae, respectively. Order. Categories like species, genus, and families are based on number of similar characters. Generally, order and other higher taxonomic categories are identified based on the aggregates of characters. Order, being a higher category, is the assemblage of families which exhibit a few similar characters. Similar characters are less in number and as compared to different genera included in a family. Plant families like Convolvulaceae, Solanaceae are included in the order Polymoniales, mainly based on floral characters. The animal order Carnivora includes families like Felidae and Canidae. Class. This category includes related orders. For example, order Primata comprising monkey, gorilla, gibbon is placed in class Mammalia along with order Carnivora that includes animals like tiger, cat and dog. Class Mammalia has other orders also. Phylum. Classes comprising animals like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds along with mammals constitute the next higher category called phylum. All these based on common features like presence of notochord and dorsal hollow neural system are included in phylum Chordata. In case of plants, classes with a few similar characters are assigned to higher category called division. Kingdom. All animals belonging to various phyla are assigned to the highest category called kingdom Animalia in the classification system of animals. The kingdom Plantae, on the other hand, is distinct and comprises all plants from various divisions. These are broad categories. However, taxonomists have also developed subcategories in this hierarchy to facilitate more sound and scientific placement of various taxa, like subfamily, tribe, etc. So, taxonomic categories showing hierarchical arrangement in ascending order. Species, genus, family, order, class, phylum or division, kingdom. Species, genus, tribe, subfamily, family, superfamily, order, subclass, class, phylum or division, and kingdom. As we go higher from species to kingdom, the number of common characteristics grows on decreasing. Lower the taxa, more are the characteristics that the members within the taxon share. Higher the category, greater is the difficulty of determining the relationships to other taxa at same level. Hence, the problem of classification becomes more complex. Organisms with their taxonomic categories. Man, biological name Homo sapiens, genus Homo, family Hominidae, order Primata, class Mammalia, phylum Chordata. Housefly, biological name Musca domestica, genus Musca, family Muscidae, order Diptera, class Insecta, phylum Arthropoda. Mango, Mangifera indica, genus Mangifera, family Anacardiaceae, order Sapindales, class Dicotyledone, and division Angiospermae. Wheat, Triticum aestivum, genus Triticum, family Poaceae, order Poales, class Monocotyledone, division Angiospermae. Taxonomical aids. Taxonomic studies of various species of plants and animals and other organisms are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in general in knowing our bioresources and their diversity. These studies would require correct classification and identification of organisms. Identification of organisms require intensive laboratory and field studies. The collection of actual specimens of plant and animal species is essential and is prime source of taxonomic studies. These are also fundamental to studies and essential for training in systematics. It is used for classification of an organism, and the information gathered is also stored along with the specimens. In some cases, the specimen is preserved for future studies. Biologists have established certain procedures and techniques to store and preserve the information as well as the specimens. Herbarium. Herbarium is a storehouse of collected plant specimens that are dried, pressed, and preserved on sheets. Further, these sheets are arranged according to universally accepted system of classification. These specimens, along with the description of herbarium sheets, become a storehouse or repository for future use. The herbarium sheets also carry a label providing information about date and place of collection, English, local, and botanical names, family, collector's name, etc. It doesn't have the height of plant mentioned. Herbaria also serve as quick reference systems in taxonomic studies. Botanical gardens. These specialized gardens have collections of living plants for reference. Plant species in these gardens are grown for identification purposes, and each plant is labeled indicating its botanical scientific name and its family. The famous botanical gardens are at Kew, England, Indian Botanical Garden, Howrah, India, and at National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, India. Museum. Biological museums are generally set up in educational institutes such as schools and colleges. Museums have collections of preserved plant and animal specimens for study and reference. Specimens are preserved in the containers or jars in preservative solutions. Plant and animal specimens may also be preserved as dry specimens. Insects are preserved in insect boxes after collecting, killing, and pinning. Larger animals like birds and mammals are usually stuffed and preserved. Museums often have collections of skeletons of animals too. Zoological parks. These are the places where wild animals are kept in protected environments under human care and which enable us to learn about their food habits and behavior. All animals in a zoo are provided as far as possible the conditions similar to their natural habitats. Parks commonly called as zoos. Key. Key is another taxonomical aid used for identification purpose of plants and animals based on similarities and dissimilarities. The keys are based on contrasting characters, generally in pair, called couplet. It represents the choice made between two opposite options. This results in acceptance of only one and rejection of the other. Each statement in key is called a lead. Separate taxonomic keys are required for each taxonomic category, such as family, genus, species, for identification purposes. Keys are generally analytical in nature.